So today I'm going to be talking to Scotty Brave, and he's an amazing street artist, graffiti artist based here in Southend, and also one of the associate artists at Third Space. So we're just going to get into some of the similar questions that we've been talking to the other associated artists. But Scotty, give us a little introduction about who you are, what you do. I've kind of said it, but you know, a little bit more about what I've said.
Yeah, so I'm an artist and a graffiti artist, like from history, like from when I was little. I was always doing graffiti and that, and I went to art college and I went to university, did a degree in graphic design and that, and then after leaving uni, I did I pursued a little bit of a different career path from the graphic design thread that I was following, and did like youth work, and that led to me sort of reintroducing my graffiti art and my passion for spray can art into working with young people, and you know, that led to all sorts of different avenues of you know, sharing my passion for art, really, from working with asylum seekers to working in schools, in all kinds of different schools and in prisons, and I'm really passionate about, you know, like sharing art and street art and getting art out there so people can see it. And anybody that's interested in graffiti and that, I want to give them the opportunity to develop that I perhaps didn't have, you know, that I struggled for. That's basically me.
So did you stop painting for a while, or did you stop doing the art in between that transition when you were doing the youth work?
Yeah, I started painting like out of college, really, and then I just never stopped. So I was working, doing like in the week I would work and teach, doing spray can art workshops and visiting schools and, as I say, prisons and all sorts of different things, and working with people. But then at the weekends or in my spare time, I was still going out and doing you know, like my personal work, which was also graffiti and spray can art and that. So yeah, I didn't really stop. A lot of artists stop. A lot of graffiti guys have stopped or returned or had periods where they've not been as productive. But I've maintained quite a steady output of work, really, for sort of 20 odd years now.
So what was it in your I suppose is there a specific moment where you can think of where you decided that's what I'm going to do for the next 20 years? You might not have known it was going to last 20 years, but what was it that kind of grabbed you? Was there something?
Yeah,
remember a specific time?
Yeah, I guess so. I was always drawing and always doing art, you know, and so I knew on leaving school, I knew that art was my best choice, my best chance of doing having a career that I could enjoy and that I was gifted in, you know, because it is a gift, I think. You know, when I was a kid, I could draw, you know, I didn't have to learn. You know, I could do it, and then it was just a case of getting better at it. And when I was a kid, I remember my grandparents saying to me, you're gonna be a commercial artist. And I thought to myself, I don't know what a commercial artist is, because I was only little, but I thought I like the sound of it. You know, it sounds pretty good. So maybe, yeah, that's probably what I'll do. And then, you know, as I said, I went to art college, and then after art college, I wanted to get a job in the city at graphic designing, but my old man said, no, go to university. You've got to go to university because it will stand you in better stead. And I said, oh, I want to do art at university. And he said, no, don't do art at university, do graphic design at university, because there's more chance of you getting a job. So I did graphic design at university, and that was in Croydon. We had a hoot, it was great. And obviously all the graffiti stuff like was gaining pace throughout my graphic design education. But then after I left uni, looking for a job in graphic design was just soul destroying. I was like, really, you want me to have had experience, but I can't, you know, the same old story.
The same old story. Yeah.
And then once you miss the boat on the first year, you've got all the next graduates coming out, and you just think, oh man, I ain't even stand a chance. So I did a little bit of freelance graphic design, and then I just thought, this is going nowhere fast. So I thought, what have I got in my, you know, in my skill set that I can use. And when I was at uni, like the university lecturer said to me, Scotty, you know, you should probably do your dissertation on graffiti art. And so I did that, and obviously it was clear that it was my passion to them. Do you know what I mean? So after not getting a job in graphic design for a long time, I was signing on. I was, as I say, a bit sort of disheartened with the whole system, thinking this is not going to work. What I'm going to end up with a bum job. And then the people at the Dole office said to me, "Here, look, do this as a way to get me off the dole." They said, "Here, do this. It's a business course. It's a, like, I don't know how long it was, a couple of months, and I had to go to a business school, and it was they showed you how to write a business plan, and they showed you, you know, how, you know, to work out like how you were going to do it and all the rest of it, what you would need." And I did all of that, and at the end of it, it was like a Prince's Trust grant. At the end of it, I didn't take the grant. I didn't take the money, but I took the bank account, the business bank account that they gave me, and I still have that same business bank account.
Wow.
So at that point, like, after being sort of told to sort of, you've been signing on for too long, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this then. This is my best chance. And I set up this thing called Brave Arts with the intention of taking spray can art and graffiti art into education.
Nice one. So what would you say you're passionate about at the moment? And that doesn't necessarily have to be connected to work. It can be anything. What's kind of driving you right now?
What I'm passionate. Well, I've said, obviously, yeah, I'm passionate about art, but I'm also passionate about, you know, equality. I'm passionate about truth. I'm passionate about justice. Fairness. I'm passionate about this movement that there is to live sustainably. I'm passionate about the future in terms of that, you know. I think I've always been passionate about, like, reading in between the lines, if you like. Yeah, I've always been interested in the alternative, the excelling in the alternative, and I think that probably comes from my interest in hip hop. When I was younger, hip hop was a big thing, and it was really a real guiding light for us. And I think the subculture, it sort of encouraged you to explore the alternative, and I think that's what it flipped. So many things got flipped on their head. Like, so I think Brim, the graffiti artist Brim, said that if you look at, like, the common culture, then you've got, you know, all of the elements of culture, like dance and music and literature, language, and fashion. And with the hip hop culture, we you know, instead of pirouetting on like a ballet dancer, we spun on our heads, and instead of playing musical instruments, we got a record player and turned that into a musical instrument. And the literacy, we made rap, and with the fashion, you know, we wore our gooses and tucked our socks into our trousers and put ribbons in our laces instead of shoes. So we did everything alternative. So I think I've always been a bit passionate about the alternative path, and excelling.
It definitely goes with the territory, doesn't it, of that, the culture being the, I suppose, you know, it was not necessarily it was the anti of what establishment was, and then it becomes the establishment, and it's like, where do you go from there? Because, you know, everybody then starts wearing fat laces, everybody starts talking in a certain way, everybody starts, you know, because the culture then becomes popular, and then is it then a subculture, or is it just popular culture? And it's really hard to kind of maintain that that edge. But I think a lot of the time the artists that are the creators always have that edge, and it's the people that are the followers that don't necessarily, you know, that kind of absorb the culture.
That's right. Yeah, culture, like, our culture has been commodified, and we recognize that. But, you know, we're still creating, we're still innovating, and I think hip hop will never die. You know, that the soul that is, you know, exploring the alternative and sort of sticking it to the parent culture, if you like, is never going to die.
It's kind of I suppose part of that conversation is when we talk about hip hop as the culture, and it being not mainstream, how does that differ? Because I remember a time, like say, I remember a time when, when MCs and the music, it tried to be different. That was the objective. It was like to stand out. What do you kind of think about now, where everybody seems like they're all trying to sound the same in order to get sales and in order to get attention? What's your kind of opinion on that, particularly in the music?
With music, people, I mean, music is just a form of expression, isn't it? You can instantly tell who's expressing themselves and doing it from the heart, and who's just jumping on a bandwagon. It's not, you can tell, like, a couple of songs into an album or a few verses into a rap where someone's coming from.
I think, sorry to cut you, I think you can, if you know what the alternative is. But if you've grown up with just that one thing,
oh
how
God,
do you
yeah,
know what's real?
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I cut you, but it was right, really. It came into my head as you were saying that. I was just adding to the conversation. So what do you think about, the kind of homogenization of, the use of the vocoder and the 16 bar that comes, all the kind of formulaic things? What's your opinion?
I don't really care, as long as people are enjoying themselves, like, as it, if you're forcing it, then you can see that it's being forced. But if like I've got a son, he's 12, he listens to terrible rap music, but he enjoys it,
He enjoys it.
and I would love for him to be listening to more conscious lyrics and understanding, what the foundations of the hip hop music was all about. But maybe that will come in the future. Maybe it will evolve into something like that, because I know that when we first got into the rap music thing, it wasn't all about peace and harmony and loveliness and togetherness. There was always, gangster rap and lyrics that were trash. So, there's always going to be an element of that. It's just some people got to do some growing up, and when they do, I hope that it's reflected in if they're making art.
Yeah. But would you say would you say you're where you want to be in the field? If you are, what was it in your spirit, in your determination, or how you operated that got you there? And if you're not, what do you think you need to do, or what barriers might be in front of you?
Yeah, I guess I am where I want to be in terms of the success that I've had as an artist. I've worked at the Tate, I've worked at the V&A, I do work for the biggest graffiti art agencies in the UK, and that like my work is recognized internationally.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm happy about that. And I got there through perseverance, through sort of unconsciously networking, if you know what I mean, like by
yeah,
being places, by being motivated to go out and paint and be in the places where other people were painting, so that I met people and I learned things and I learned where places were. And I think pushing the boundaries of my work was really important to me as well. Like, there's a lot of people within my field that will go out and paint regularly, but really never push the boat out, if you know what I mean. They don't, it's formulaic, they do the same thing every week, and as long as that's fun for them, hey, cool, that's great. But I'm more about trying to progress, trying to push the boundaries of where my comfort zones are. So I think, that's probably done me a lot of favors in terms of like where I am career wise. And where I want to be is, I don't know, I want more of the same. Like, I want to be seen more. I want more opportunities to paint in places where more people are going to see it. I mean, like my website was one of the first independent websites. brave1.co.uk was one of the first independent graffiti artist websites. We put it up in 20 years ago. Yeah. And there was websites out there dedicated to graffiti, but there wasn't very many specific like artists just doing a website and putting their work on it. So that stood me in good stead, because digitally, like on the internet and everything, it changed everything. And me having a presence on there from day one was useful, and I learned, you know, the etiquette of putting art online, and how to deal with all kinds of different issues that pop up when you do have art online, from criticism to trolling to you know, to having your work nicked or copied or bitten, as they say. So yeah, I'm pretty much where I want to be, except there's something within graffiti that has always frustrated me a little bit, and that is that we do so much work that isn't seen, and unless you're putting it on the internet or showing people photographs of it, no one's going to see it, except for if you're a graffiti artist, or if you're I don't know, like a trespasser or an urban explorer or something, you know. And now there's this new fad, this street art thing, and street artists who have no background in like graffiti art are freely painting the streets, and they're painting spots where for a long time graffiti artists have thought, oh, I'd like to do a piece there, you know. And myself, I can't go out in the street without seeing it as a canvas. I see this wall over there, or I'll walk past a wall and think, you know, I'd like to paint that. I want to do something on that. And that's where I want to be. I want to have the credentials to be able to approach people who own walls in the public domain and say, hey, you know, that wall would benefit from me doing a painting on it, rather than me going out in the middle of the night and doing something quick on it. And that's, you know, people might think is ugly. That's where I want to be. I want to be accepted, and I want my work to be in public.
Do you mean like when you say you see those things, you know, these newer street artists, do you mean like that they're throwing up big pieces, or it's literally like, you know, where they use the environment to kind of make something from it? I don't know. So you've got, like, I've seen some street art where you'll have like some pipes at the back of you know, at the back of a building, and then somebody goes in and paints them like snakes. Is that the sort of thing you mean? Or
yeah, no, I see that as well. Yeah, I see that. But my preference is, you know, a nice big smooth wall with no interruptions. You know, if I'm given a wall and it's got pipes on it or windows in a certain place, then I'll work on that and try to develop that into the piece of work and that. But yeah, I prefer a blank canvas, man. I you know, when there's a big blank wall, or even if it's a wall that's not blank because it's got some tags on it or an advert on it or whatever, I just think, let's paint something on that. Let's make something of it.
So what about trains? Going back, what you know, the train graveyard that's near us?
Yeah,
have you been up there?
No, I've not been there.
Well, no, even if you had, you'd say no, right? That's the nature of it.
The thing is, right, like,
you should have said, I haven't got a clue. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. So so there's an undeniable link between graffiti and trains. And it's beautiful when you see graffiti on trains. And if you look at the original graffiti artists that worked in New York and stuff like that, their focus was on trains. People that I know have died painting trains. People that I know have been severely injured painting trains. So my public profile, and the fact that I am an influencer, if you like, and I work with young people, I say stay away from it. Because you might get killed, and it ain't worth it. So as good as it was back in the day, and as exciting as it is, I'd say if you can find a wall, do it on a wall, because that time has passed. If you're interested, though, there's loads of cool trains and stuff online, and you can go to places where there's still trains running, you know, like Rome and stuff, you know, there's, you know, and still people put work on trains, and I think it's great, but I don't want to get in trouble, especially not at this stage. Like when I was a kid, it was quite clear to me that some of us were doing graffiti to avoid trouble. Yeah, we were doing graffiti to get out of like you know, to not be in situations where we were going to get in fights, or to get in situations where we were going to be, you know, mugging people or whatever. So the graffiti provided me with an alternative to getting in trouble, but I could see that there were some people who wanted trouble from it, and they used the graffiti as a way to bring trouble to them, whereas I wanted to do the opposite. And that's why I went in the direction that I did.
Cool. You hinted a little bit about this kind of next question I'm going to go on to. Is there something that you'd like to change in the scene? Is there, you know, what is there anything that kind of like really frustrates you? And if so, is there anything that you've been doing about it? Is there anything? Do you feel you have the power to change it?
So, like, there are a few things that I would like to change about the graffiti art or the street art scene, or there's so many different ways of describing it. As us spray can artists, you know, if you're a spray can artist, you need lots of space to develop. You can't do a small painting. You have to do a big one. So you need a wall, and there aren't many places where you can do that legally. So I would like to see it, like people have been discouraged from doing spray can art or doing graffiti art. The graffiti, the G word, confuses things, because you know, that goes hand in hand with vandalism and getting in trouble, like I just said. I think if you know, there are artists out there who paint with brushes, or they paint digitally and whatnot, and they have a desire to try out what it's like to work with spray paint. And they're not just young artists, some of them are old artists, some of them are people that have had a career in watercolor and just want to change it. They want to try out what it's like to paint with spray cans. You know, they've seen the work on the streets and they think, I'd like to have a go, I can paint, I wonder what it would. But there's nowhere they can practice, there's nowhere they can have a go. So I'd like for there to be more places where it's okay for you to come here and do a piece. Having said that, the places that there are available for that kind of practice are, what it means is that you paint something and you cannot be precious about it, because it will get painted over, sometimes straight away. Yeah. And us graffiti artists or us street artists, like, we have a bizarre sort of lack of respect, if you like, for our own work and our peers' work, because of the nature of it being so fast moving. You know, you go, you do a piece, and you might spend a whole day on it and be really pleased with it and all the rest of it, but then after you walk away from it, someone else is going to paint over it, and you can't be mad at them. And that's like, as I get older, I find it more difficult to not be mad at them, because my time is more precious now. You know, I have a family, I've got other things that I need to be spending. So when I do a big piece and it gets gone over, you know, in 48 hours, I think, you know, like that annoys me now. It always has annoyed me. And I think there are people within the graffiti art scene that say, that's just the way it goes. That's the way the penny drops, you know. Everybody's, you know, just paint. It's just paint on a wall after all. Once you take your photo, that's that. But so if I could change something, it would be, you know, how there'd be some sort of hierarchical structure. You know, like, you know, there used to be talk of, if you can't beat it, then don't go over it. You know, if you're not going to burn it, then don't go over it. That doesn't. So
then, how do you feel when you're going over somebody's?
Well, I do go over people. Obviously, I have to, because you know, that's the nature of what we do. But I would pick carefully who I go over. Whereas I sometimes arrive at a wall with people and they've already decided they're painting this spot, regardless of what's painted on it already. I'm a sensitive type, right? And I think I don't know if that does me any favors or not, but I'm trying to put, I've tried to. It's part of my persona, I think, part of my it's in my consciousness to try to imagine what other people are going to feel like, to put myself in other people's shoes. And some people just don't do that. And I think, you know, if we all tried to, you know, treat others how we would expect to be treated, then the world would be a better place, right? So
we wouldn't need religions, right?
Well, maybe you're right.
You just need one commandment, or you just need one thing: treat everybody like you wish to be treated.
I know, right?
Unless obviously, you know, you like being treated badly, but you know, that's another thing.
It seems simple to me, but a lot of people don't get it. So I would, if I could change something, I would do that.
You should go around with some calling cards and just put them on pieces. Like, I could have gone over yours, but I didn't. So
I'll often take a picture as well.
Yeah,
Like
you
I
start to
take it
build up
like
this
if I'm
reputation as the conscious graffiti artist.
well back in the day, like when we used to paint at Plasto, I remember writing on a
Yeah,
piece. Back in the day, we used to say peace to the writers whose burners we went over, which is
yeah,
just
yeah.
a simple, like once you've done your piece, you do your signature on it and you do a little line or a list of shout outs to the people that are in your crew or that paint that wall.
Mm.
And out of respect, if we went over someone, I would often just put them up so that when they saw that I'd gone over them, they'd be like, of course they'd still be mad, you know. But if I did a little
But
deddy to them, then maybe that would take a little bit of the blow away from it, you know. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
So
think we
I was
don't
thinking that
respect each other enough.
I was thinking then when you were talking about the walls and going over them, is I was thinking like this idea of like, you know, when you have apartments and you have timeshare, it's
Right.
like these are the walls that you can have. Let's have timeshare. You have that bit for 6 months. You have that bit for 6. Do you know what I mean? You literally have a locking key to that space, and nobody else can get in. And then that's cool. You know, that's the concept. But obviously, it's not going to be for everybody. But it's just something that I thought of. That might be
It's
an
just
idea.
all it's all part and parcel of it, you know. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that my haters have motivated me, you know, because
Mm,
you know, there are people that paint over me, and I think, damn, you know, and I'm not going to go out just to paint over them, but it just makes me want to do a better piece next time or a bigger one
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
another
yeah,
one, you know. It's so it has been part of the motivation for me, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Another change that I'd like to make, I think, is a general change in the like I talk about graffiti art and I talk about the places where we paint and how we go over each other and all the rest of it. But
Mm,
I miss out in that equation the public domain, because often those, as I said, a lot of the paintings that we do are they're not in the public domain. They're in places where we can get away with it. You know, they're in
yeah,
abandoned
yeah,
places, or they're in the Leek Street Tunnel, or wherever. You know,
yeah,
where we
yeah.
can paint and not be, not find ourselves in trouble. And so, what I'd like to change is the that people's um, general expectation of the visual stimulus of the public domain is low. When we go out and we're
Mm,
just walking in the street, we are expecting to see adverts, signs, yeah. And
mm,
to me, like when I wrote my dissertation, I did a section on comparing the use of space, how advertisers use space,
mm,
to how graffiti artists use space, right? And
mm, mm.
I think that's really interesting. I think that it's a shame. I think that it's kind of sad that there's this creative industry. It's called advertising, and there are so many amazing minds and
Yeah,
like people with the most crazy ideas
yeah.
and really gifted people, and they dedicate their entire creativity to selling products. And we
Mm,
accept that. We go out on the
mm,
street, we see adverts, they bombard us
mm,
with
mm,
messages of you're inadequate, you need this to be complete. You know, I just think that in that space there should be space for artists, creatives, and they are the ones, remember, that are creating the adverts. There should be
exactly.
space for them to just say, this is my art. And maybe we can think about those visual images differently to you know, it's not always about the sale. Perhaps it's about consciousness, perhaps it's about you know, perhaps it's a story, perhaps it's
Mm,
something, you know, it's something different to the sales pitch, basically. So
yeah,
that's something I'd like to see. I'd like to see more artists with the opportunity to just put work in the public domain in the place of advertising. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I'd
yeah.
like to see.
So that's kind of a little bit where I'm going with up my street, with you know the augmented reality stuff. Because I know
Yeah,
having something that everybody can't see is like it's not as good as with that kind of you know physical interaction with a painting. You know, but I always use that analogy of you know an MP3 is not like going to a live concert. It just gives you another option. So this idea
yeah,
of
yeah.
that we're you know doing with on my street and having augmented reality, anybody that this kind of solves the problem of people going over pieces as well, because you can have your your zone or your drop. So when somebody scans that area or that code or that monument, your pieces come up, and then they can
How
have a
lovely
choice.
would that be? Yeah, yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do. But then as well, if we're looking at how advertisers can work with artists, it's like, well, people are like you say, artists are the advertising is a creative pursuit. Most things that we do is a creative pursuit, a business plan, a chair design. So if we're then working with artists to bring an alternative vision to advertising, that's what they do. But then it gets a bit more, then it gets trashed in the sense that actually it needs to be like this to get people to spend money or get people to buy the medicines. But actually, if we're then working with an organization that's like about well-being, and we're putting something up that's about well-being, for me, I agree with you. That's golden to be able to have an area where you can go and receive those messages that are not just people talk about this whole thing about the economic recovery. For me, what about the well-being recovery? There's no point in having an economic recovery if there's no well-being recovery, because after
Exactly.
these next few months, next few years, mental health and all those things that we're going to need to keep the economy going, to keep people going, and people are going to suffer. And there needs to be that, for me, there needs to be that view of that it's not advertising to make you part with money. It's advertising to we can make you feel better. If it's a real welfare state, where's the welfare?
Yeah, right. I like the idea of peeling back layers, like with the augmented reality, what you might be able to do by peeling back the layers. Like me and my boy, we did this thing the other day on Google Maps where you can find your house or you can find a street, and then you can go back in time and look at what it looked like to 10 years ago. Yeah. So you can see, extensions happening, buildings getting knocked down, demolished and being built.
Okay.
And I think that that could be quite interesting in terms of what we talked about with graffiti going over itself, or you could take your phone and point it and see underneath that piece there's this piece, and before that piece there was that one. That's cool.
Yeah. It's interesting because there was a while ago when you talked about Google Maps, there was this guy that put himself on Google Maps. It was basically like I was going along this street, and he put a tag in of himself. You focused on his balcony, and there's a link to his website. I'm like, how do you do that? But being able to do something like that, where you could map your pieces in that space, is like a little bit what you're talking about going back in time. It's a really cool idea. Cool. I've got a couple more questions. I know these always kind of take a little bit longer than we think they're going to do when we get talking. So take you in another place here. Is there something or someone you'd like to swap places with for the day? And what would you do in that day? This is where we are now. So not necessarily thinking about your past and about things that you change. It's about we're here now. Who in the world or what in the world would you become? And what would you do in that time, that 24 hours?
That's a great question. I think, right? I am interested in people's perceptions of me. All right. So I would be somebody close to me, because I heard someone say, what other people think of you is none of your business. Right? And how you imagine you're perceived by others is probably not how they think of you at all. And I've met people before and they've gone, oh my God, I thought you would be bigger, or, and so if I had to swap with somebody for the day, I would probably swap with someone close to me, maybe even my missus, and then I would just follow me around and learn about me and learn about the vibes that I was giving off, and because then I could be reflective and find out, like if I was giving off wrong vibes, or how I could improve that. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in how people make up an idea of who you are and imagine that, and then they project that on you, and then when they meet you, if you're not that person, they still treat you like that you're that person, or so that's probably what I would do. I would probably swap with someone close to me, like maybe even my missus.
Yeah. So would you change anything about yourself then if you saw something and you're like, oh, that's a bit, I don't like that? Because if
Of
your missus is okay
course.
with it, but you're not okay with it, and you change it, and then she's not okay with it.
Well, I don't know. Who can ever be? Who can ever have a missus that's completely happy with them, eh? None of us can. But no, that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to see yourself from the
Yeah,
perspective of
absolutely.
others.
Yeah, amazing. That question is really cool, because you get such a variety of ideas. Like when I was
Yeah, I
talking
bet.
to Dimitri the other day, he's like, I'd like to be just pure energy, so I could
Oh
go
yeah.
wherever I want at any time and just be. And because because he does the light painting thing, he's like, oh, actually, you could just become the light. So,
Cool. I
yeah,
like that. Yeah, that's cool.
it's really a really nice question. Okay, so we're down to our last one. Because obviously you've done stuff at Third Space, and we can see your stuff in the background of this of where I
Yeah.
am, all over actually. So my other question is, I know you've done some stuff there, some projects there. I'm really interested in how we can further help artists or facilitate what they want to do in a ideal world. Don't think about funding, don't think about people, in the sense that restrictions. In an ideal world, what sort of project would you like to run from the space? What would it look like?
In an ideal world, what project would I run from Third Space?
Yeah, what would it look like?
I don't know. I think like I like doing the workshops. I like teaching, you know. I'd like to, and in terms of developing a street art, I'd like to have some sort of consultation with people as to where they think would be a good place for street art, or what kind of topics we could explore with it. Like recently, I saw that as part of the London Mural Fest, Smug painted this this woman on this block of flats, and she's lived in this block of flats for like 50 years, and all the locals know her.
Yeah,
and so he did this great portrait of her, and now she's there forever, right? And I think that's beautiful. I think that's really, like, as far as street art goes, that's perfect. And because not only does it sort of put her in there and make it kind of like it timeless, but it makes other people think, oh, well, what can I do to be somebody that gets painted in the future in my area, you know? And I think you know, that's teamwork, that's consultation with your community. I think what I like about the Third Space is that it's, you know, you're not on your own. You've got creatives with similar ideas. Like nothing, you know, two heads is always going to be better than one. And if there's people with similar visions and similar attitudes, you know, accept support from them. You know, move forward, because together we're stronger. So yeah, I think more collaboration with artists and creatives, more linking with the community, and finding out how, you know, what our expectations are of each other. Yeah, that really.
Yeah. So it's interesting when we talked before, and we were talking about the shipping container down near the skate park, the new skate park, and I'd spoken to, you know, a couple of councillors about that, and there's always this thing of like, well, for me, it's quite an easy solution where it's a temporary structure and it can be moved. But I know there's plans apparently to build a children's play area when they start to do the, you know, the whole Queensway development. That's probably not going to be for another 2 years. But wouldn't it be great to have a shipping container there for 2 years? Because it can be dropped off and picked up, and you've done, you know, you've been able to do loads of the work that you're talking about with like the youth work and the connected to that space. But it's always a challenge convincing those that make the decisions the value of what you're trying to do, unless they come up with the idea. Because if they come up with the idea, it's like, oh, this is a good idea.
When I was a youth worker, I did a lot of work with skaters and skate parks. And I see skateboarding as similar, because in my life I was a skateboarder as well, as well as the graffiti and all of that happened. And I've seen skate parks being built left, right, and centre all over the place to encourage it. I've now seen that skateboarding is in the Olympics, but I still don't see.
And breaking.
Exactly, right? But I still don't see graffiti being like, you know, we build skate parks and encourage it, but we don't encourage the art. So
Art.
I'm working on projects that are related to skate parks, where the skate park also has a bolt on place where people can practice their spray can art as well. But
Yeah,
my
yeah.
point was that when I was working with councils, they were like, oh, the skateboarding community is there. They want a skate park. Okay, we know someone who can do that. Boom, there it is. Skate it. No consultation with the skaters. Like the skaters were like, we didn't want it like that. Why didn't you ask us?
Exactly.
You know, like we
Yeah,
can't use it if it's like that. And for
yeah.
you know, for the same amount of money and a little bit of consultation, you could have had we could have had a much different experience. So yeah, so I worked on a few projects where we you know consulted with the actual users of the parks and found out what they wanted and found out that it
Yeah,
was very different to what councils wanted to do. So
exactly. But isn't that the case? You know, a lot of councils, you know, they do have that intention, but just that consultancy that's more than, you know, a form to fill out, because that's not going to engage people. If you're doing something in a different way, you're engaging people through the art, through the creativity, being able to kind of really elicit a good response of what it is that they want. Because all great, you know, you can have those intentions that are good, but it's really difficult to get it right if you're not a skater. if you're
yeah,
somebody
you can't.
if you're somebody that's making policy and you're not a skater, how could you possibly get it right without consultancy?
Exactly. You can't please all the people all the time,
No,
obviously, but you can at least be seen to make an effort, like
exactly.
and
Get
try.
get an idea of what's needed rather than imagining what's needed. But yeah, but isn't that always our, as artists, our kind of challenge of, you know, getting to, you know, being that person in between which councils or corporations come to reach your community, but then as an artist, as a creative, you're not given the power to go any further. You're kind of caught in this place in between, rather than as an artist being able to make the decision or add towards that consultancy and make sure it, you know, it manifests. But I
It
think,
can drive
you
you
know,
mad, can't it?
I think that that's gonna have to change, because if it, way they've been operating, if it's been successful, then we won't be in the situation that we're in now, where, you know, communities are not engaged, as town centres are falling apart. So if that worked, it worked then, but I think there's going to have to be a complete shift in how we, you know, create that built environment. And artists and creatives are absolutely key. And, you know, the people that are making the decisions have got to listen. They've got to, like, take their ego out of it. They've got to take that responsibility, I think, as well, of them having to think they know everything, or think they know everything. It's like, assume you know nothing and then you learn.
There's a language barrier, isn't there? There's a
Yeah,
language barrier. They've got to meet us halfway, because
yeah, yeah,
often, you know, they have a certain way of speaking and they demand you to speak in that way. And if
yeah,
you're not speaking that in the way that they want you to speak, then they're not going to hear you. So
yeah,
they kind of need to, they need to be let's meet halfway.
yeah. And it's as well, when you come to procurement, you know, that whole task of procurement when you're working for a local, or trying to apply to a local authority. Some artists and creatives, it's just like, I want to paint, I want to do the work, this is the work that I do, rather than going through this long process of procurement. And I get it, it's public money that they're spending, but actually look at the result. Change that system, or change that way that you're working, because you know, they end up working with the same people they work with for 10 years, and it don't
Yeah.
work. There's got to be new people on the block. But yeah, that's my rant. So wicked Scotty, is there anything else you want to add? Any closing stuff? Because we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up there.
My website is
Yeah.
braveone.co.uk. So it's braveone.co.uk. My Instagram is brave_arts, ARTS. And yeah, I'm on Facebook as well, Scotty Brave or Brave Arts. So check it out, get involved, give me some support. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scotty. Always a pleasure.
All right, nice one. Cheers.
All right, nice one. Thanks, Scotty.